Okay, moving on to our second color topic, color behavior. Before we go further, we're going to be talking about color blindness in a few lectures, but I think it's helpful before we do that to go over some of the color basics. But I'm aware that there is a high probability that a few of the males, at least in the class, may experience some form of color blindness, and that this topic in general might be really frustrating. But hang in there. We'll get into color blindness in a few lectures, and in the meantime, let's just cover some of the basics. Okay, so we're talking about behavior. Warm colors like reds, oranges, yellows, and browns that have a red, orange, or yellow tint, these tend to appear larger than cool colors. And in equal amounts, red will overpower blue. Warm colors also appear closer, while cool colors visually recede. And here's an example of that. If you look at the image on the left, to me anyway, the red seems to be the foreground and the blue is the background, even though they're equal vibrancy and intensity. On the right-hand side, to me, the red looks like the foreground and the background is defined more by the blue. They seem more like shadows. So this is something called chromostereopsis, just in case those of you are into stuff like that. Okay, so intuitively, colors mean things to us, right? Conventional colors, red is used for heat, for threat, for danger, for dryness. They're colors that are also very energetic. They feel bright. They seem trusting or action-filled, maybe, maybe not. You can agree with these or not. These are just some of the kind of intuitions attached to warm colors. And then, obviously, the inverse is that cool colors appear smaller and visually recede relative to warm colors. And intuitively, cool colors, hopefully you feel the same way, that the cool colors, especially with blue on maps, represents water very intuitively. There's something very fresh and clean, serene about cool colors. They're more calming, cold, things like that. Here's an example of warm advancing and cool receding, and this is used all the time in web design. Buttons tend to be warm colors because they're more inviting, they stand out better, and yeah, I think this makes that comparison effectively. Okay, here's another example. The smaller area of saturated color draws your eye much more than the larger areas of more muted color. And there's two things working here. It's not just the vibrancy of the red or the intensity and the muted or desaturated color of blue, but also the contrast with the background. There's more contrast between the red and the black. So two things working, but the vibrancy is definitely a main driver here. Okay. It's important to know that the way we perceive color is very influenced by neighboring colors in both value and tone. The red against the black background appears very brilliant, a little bit duller arguably against the white background. In contrast with the orange, the red almost appears lifeless. It's much more dull, but with the teal in the background, it almost vibrates on the screen. So we can control the way we want our colors to behave, but we also need to be aware of them. Do some of the red squares also, just as a side note, appear larger to you than others? Just a question. Okay, so again, the way we perceive color depends on surrounding colors. So question, are these rectangles the same color or different color? Green. To me, this one appears much more bluish green, and this one is a much warmer green. Turns out they're the exact same color. But because of the surrounding color, we perceive them differently. So this is really important with heat maps and choropleth maps, things like that. Just one more example for fun. Are these squares same color or different color? I don't know. They seem different to me, but they're definitely closer than in the last example. But these two are very different colors. This one is more pink, and this one is more green. Okay, and then a fun optical illusion just for kicks. We have a box here with a white bottom and a dark gray lid, right? Right. here's a color match, but I would tell you that the grays are the exact same color. Ta-da! Exact same color gray. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? So here's why it's important. The two rectangles here with the stars in them are the exact same tint of red. But because of the surrounding colors, this one appears much darker than this one. So this is active. This is like what we do when we make choropleth maps, or if we're going to make a heat map. So it's you need to consider how a viewer is going to evaluate the shades or the colors and be able to extract values from them if we're actively being influenced by the proximate colors and values on the page. So be aware, these are great ways of displaying data when we just want to show overall patterns and trends, but not a great way to have a viewer be able to extract an exact value from your chart or map. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about contrast effect. There's two forms. There's simultaneous and one that's more sequential. So contrast effect is how an object, how its appearance is either enhanced or diminished or changed relative to normal due to successive or simultaneous exposure to something else, another color, another shape. Okay, so this is kind of the classic example here. This is called the Ebbinghaus illusion. And the question is, the center circles, are they the same size? Are they different sizes? Which group has the biggest circle in the middle? And of course the answer is they're all the exact same size, and you probably know that because you've seen this before. But the way we evaluate the size of this middle circle is being affected by the surrounding sizes. This one is made to appear bigger because in comparison it is bigger. So the same thing holds true down here. Which center square contains the darkest shade of gray? Or are they all the same? And they are all the exact same shade of gray. This is called simultaneous contrast effect because we're actively comparing it to the things around it. The other type is called successive contrast effect. And this, I would say, is not as relevant for data visualization, but it's something cool to be aware of. So what I want you to do is stare at the little circle, the little black circle in the middle of the red circle. Just stare at that for a second. Okay, now look straight down to the black circle below it. And you'll see that the two shades of yellow here are very different. This one's very green and this one's very orange if you're staring at this guy. This has to do with cone fatigue. Cones are the part of our eye that pick up the red, green, blue wavelengths. And when we sit and stare at this red dot, the red cones, or really, because it's visual light, the green and red cones, red cones. Yeah, red. Down here, we're having red cone fatigue, and so this appears more greenish blue. Those cones are kicking in. And the same thing would happen if you stared at this one and then moved down. Our peripheral, quote unquote, peripheral vision, the cones are just reacting to what we saw up here. So that's called successive contrast effect. And it's just interesting. If you watch that other video that the guys made, there's a little bit more information about cone fatigue. But anyway, just food for thought. Thanks, and we'll be moving on to our next topic.